This episode of Needed to Hear That is brought to you by LightSource. What do we need when we're in the dark? Sometimes it's simply just a light source.
This episode is sponsored by McKelvey Insurance Group. If you've ever felt confused or overwhelmed by insurance, McKelvey Insurance Group keeps it simple. They're an independent agency, which means they compare options from multiple providers to find coverage that actually fits you, not just one company's policy. No pressure, no jargon, just honest guidance and real help. You can get a quick quote or a policy review at McKelveyINS.com or call 618-623-0080. Thanks to McKelvey Insurance Group for supporting the show.
Hi.
There we go.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Needed to hear that episode. I always lose track.
6.
One of them. Yeah, okay.
Probably in that range.
Yeah, and you've added some flair to our table. I love it. And it's, I kind of go for the messy look.
Mm.
And you had a piece of paper. You're like, no, this looks bad. I'm like, you don't know. It's good. It's good. We've added some pens, LightSource pens. What's this?
It's our one sheet
Okay.
on what to expect in therapy.
And you have a copy of that for me to take home.
Yeah.
Review.
Yeah. And we'll send it for people to post and for you to have and maybe to put on your bathroom mirror and
Good.
be able to return to.
The core right now, like the cameras kind of just focus on us speakers, but really my goal is to I just want the room recorded.
Yeah.
I want the room. So the table, the shirts, we can, get a LightSource shirt up here, some decor. It needs a woman's touch, I think, and maybe a decorator's touch. I don't know if that's
Maybe just a little bit of thoughtfulness in some direction.
Sure.
Which you might assume is feminine in nature, but, depending on the person.
I want to disclose to you and admit before we dive into what you want to talk about tonight that I'm a lump on a log right now. And if you can tell, I've got my fandom going.
Yeah. And
we lost in overtime to Wisconsin, and we can't close these out.
Another episode on grief.
Yeah. And I'm a sore loser, and it really, when Illinois loses in March, it really takes my dopamine down to a low. So I'll try to participate the best I can. The good news is they'll have this weekend off and find out what seed they get. There was a chance they were going to play in St. Louis, but you don't get favors when you get kicked out of your tournament a little early.
Yeah.
So Fighting Illini basketball has my dauber down.
All right.
And the last thing I'll say about sports, I'm also daubered down on our St. Louis Blues because I won a top 3 pick, and now they can't lose.
But the emergence of Logan Mailloux has been great.
Thank God.
I'm really excited. He won me over getting scrappy, and that's how you win Holly over too.
Do you know who he's winning? Who is really enjoying this and winning over on Twitter is Mr. 44 Chris Pronger, the captain that introduced Terry Yake to his Sherwood back in '99.
I will always have a soft spot for Pronger. I mean, not that he's a Hall of Famer, so everybody likes him. But I think about doing.
I don't say everybody. Terry Yake wasn't too happy with him.
Doing the math on that. When we'd go get autographs when we were kids. And
kids, let's clear that up.
Yeah, kids. We go get autographs. We wait after the game and get autographs. And that was the first year that Pronger was here. Was kind of like the golden age of me being like waiting after games to get autographs. And Pronger was incredibly kind.
Yeah,
all the time. He would sign. He would talk to you. He would hang out. And thinking back with some real age to me now, I think about like that would have been like 21-year-old Chris Pronger, who has been traded here for beloved Brendan Shanahan, he has to win over an entire fan base for this trade with
Craig Janney didn't love him.
No fault of his own. And I'm like, gosh, I don't know a lot of people that had that kind of like patience and professionalism at 21 to,
Here's my Sharpie.
Yeah. And of course, like I was a kid and he was 6'6" and 21. So might as well be 50 as far as I'm concerned at my age. But it really was an interesting, in hindsight, I think about, he was always kind to us as fans. He was always thoughtful. And that would have been a lot of pressure on his shoulders as like a 21-year-old person.
Sure.
Which is an era that most of us don't really want to reflect on with grace.
You took me to Shenanigans on my 21st birthday to start a fight.
Yeah, it was lucky me.
I don't know if I told you I was going there to start a fight, but I definitely did.
No, yeah, I mean, it's probably on me for not assuming.
Right. Yeah.
But
we left Fridays to go to Shenanigans. And if I was leaving Fridays, I had a purpose.
I wouldn't have known that then. I was not frequently at Fridays. That's not a place I enjoyed.
Not TGI Fridays for our listeners. It's a nice little neighborhood tavern in downtown Belleville.
Oh, good. Better not be a future sponsor.
Maybe on this one. I don't know if they should sponsor. I don't know if we should have a tavern sponsor the recovery show that is Panos Anonymous, but needed to hear that, Bartenders are like therapists. That old John P.
Yeah.
Shout out to Johnny Haggerty.
Yeah.
So glad we're doing this. We are this will drop. We have some spring break things coming up. Producer Jeff is on spring break now. I have a couple days in Nashville for work/spring break early next week, so we're not recording on our typical Monday. So yeah, this will, I guess, release a week from today. Since tonight's Friday. So before we recorded last week's the episode that just dropped today on loneliness, you had sent me a text that week and said, I got two things that are kind of screaming at you, and you were kind enough to say, is there anything jumping out at you? And I mean this, the idea is you had a great loneliness, and then what we want to talk about today. But I want you to know, if there's something, I'll definitely tell you and try to unpack some stuff.
Yeah, because there's a little bit of the occasional, let's say, Quaker meeting aspect. If you feel compelled to speak, that if there's topically, I want to go that direction, because that's some of it too. Is when you start thinking about where, we talked about loneliness. What we brought in today is kind of trying to maybe help people feel a little bit more comfortable with what they would ask for or expect if they're looking for help. There's a lot of stuff that you're going to contribute, that you need to contribute as somebody that you have made a whole universe out of normalizing a lot of difficult processes. Like you have a recovery show, you have an interview show with people that are telling their story. You're in here with me. You sit around, bring friends in. It's Zoe, Jeff. You just had Cam in here. All of that kind of, if we're going to put it under an umbrella, it fits under an umbrella of normalizing different kinds of difficult talks. Different kinds of things that you would approach or topics you would approach, to bring in a parent that has lost a child, to bring in a person who is sober that was maybe incarcerated and has, all kinds of history, to bring those in and bring those stories in. The hope is somewhere this is helping somebody maybe put language to something that they need or a conversation they need to have. And so like you're doing that in pretty much every setting across the board. And here you and I are doing, that's the same thing, is that there's going to be things that you need to normalize or help normalize that are just tough talks.
PAFO is really taking on the identity. It's a newer show and nobody really knows what it is. But I said it on today's recording. You nailed it when you were talking about our duo dogs and when they get to take that blue vest off and be dogs. I mean, that's what that show is providing, some cathartic, I think the word for this show, I'd call it F around, but you may call it silliness. It's low pressure. Sometimes it can be a little pee-pee talk, a little toilet humor, but it's
which has been banned from Needed to Hear that.
Right. So it's definitely so we got our blue vest on here. Needed to Hear that. We got our blue vest, our Duo Dog blue vest on Pawnuffs Anonymous. When people come in and talk about their some triumphs from dark rock bottoms. Some there is not. When you're a mother talking about a lost son, there's not that happy ending to the story. There's, complete and utter awe in a mother that is getting out of bed every day to help make sure this happens to less and no other mother, but in reality, less and less moms. So, yes, that's inspirational. Yes, it's, I would say it can be beautiful, but it's at the same time brutal. So, that's what PFAO has turned into. And I have a lot of fun. I learn a lot every time we talk, but to bring that, I hope I'm bringing a perspective of what you guys would see, walk into LightSource or call you and say, hey, I need help with, but that's hard to even do. So how do we ask? Like, what do we?
So we have the backstory or the kind of origin story at LightSource where I've talked about on here, the kind of what do you need in the dark and how we came to that name. But another part of it was there is a story in Buddhism that when the Buddha died, when Siddhartha died, he died in his 80s from food poisoning.
Oof. Cantaloupe.
Yeah, exactly. And so
that took you down big time.
When he was at the end of his life, he basically tells his students some version of what we now refer to as, becoming a lamp unto yourself. That like, even if you're too attached, the Buddha says, if you're getting too attached to my teachings, you've already lost the point, right? You need to be able to regain trust in your own experience and your own process. And so when we thought of LightSource and we created the logo of a lantern.
And I'm looking at it now on your shirt because I haven't seen that color. I've seen you wear it. But that is your logo.
Yeah.
And it is a lantern. I think you know where I see it. It's kind of is it blue and some yellow?
Mm-hmm.
It's on our thumbnails in our social media posts. So that's where I see it. And it's a lantern.
Yeah.
So explain.
Yeah. And that was because we thought of talking to Amanda Pepper, who does all of our design. Before I had the logo and the name, we were trying to think of things, and we were thinking of this idea of, kind of like reading by candlelight, like this, just illuminating one step at a time. Not, therapy as a concept is not something where you want to put the floodlights on everything and be able to see it all at once. You want to find
that sounds scary.
Yeah, these little ways that you can illuminate something that's just enough, and that the role of a therapist would be to help kind of gauge just how much light the situation can handle, and just look at that next little bit that would be illuminated. As Bob Niemeyer would say, you're the guide by the side, not the sage on the stage. And so we,
quote him a lot. As Bobby Niemeyer.
Love Bob. Yeah. Wish he was in St. Louis. And so we get this idea of LightSource and the lantern, and part of what is so cool about even the story of becoming a lamp unto yourself, which is all over Buddhism, is it's not the thought of you have to do it on your own. There's a little bit of self-reliance that can become harmful to some people, because they start thinking, we know that when people decide they want to ask for help, that it's a moment of weakness, or that people don't want to admit they need help because they're afraid that they're going to seem or feel weak.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about that here, right? People being strong enough to be weak as an example. But where I really think about talking about therapy in this lens is trying to give some language to what does a process look like? What can you expect? What should you look for? Because asking for help is really, really hard. B, therapy is not something that out of the gate feels like just like the most interesting investment, right? It's really, really hard. It's going to take a long time, and not always a long time. You can come and go as you please, which we'll get to. But what ended up happening was at some point we were approached about sponsoring like a wellness fair. And as anything comes with a sponsorship, the discussion was, well, don't worry, we're going to have 1,200 people in and out of this fair. We're going to have this or we're going to have that. So you can put cards and contacts and all that stuff. And we kind of said, well, of course, like we want to help, or we want to sponsor. I think we sponsored, we paid for coffee and stuff. Grim and Pour brought coffee over. And I said, our goal is that we want people to be interested and engaged in therapy. Our goal isn't necessarily that it has to be with us at LightSource. LightSource is absolutely a beacon for the idea that the therapy can be helpful, that talking, sharing, building trust can be helpful. But we're small. Right. So we are champions of therapy. We want people to go and talk to people and find people. But
you don't want people sitting on your wait list.
But we're not growing in that way. That's not our goal. Our goal when we're talking to people about therapy is that the concept of psychotherapy, talk therapy, can be really, really helpful and really, really beautiful. And we believe in that. And that we want that to be a big part of our community. We want it to be a big part of the healing community in general. So what we ended up doing with the sponsorship was I also put together this one sheet of becoming a lamp unto yourself, some things to kind of understand about therapy if you're going into it. So that way anybody that would maybe grab one of these flyers saw that as kind of taking the teeth out of a scary process.
Talking about dream of building a nonprofit in the recovery space and supporting folks out of inpatient into outpatient and sober living. A sober living house has 12 beds maybe. We want people in sober living, all sober living,
right?
So I was hearing that at LightSource, you guys, you're not wanting everybody to just wait on your wait list. You're referring out. You want people to seek therapy in a healthy way. You've made it pretty clear that you're at like max capacity as far as clinicians and space and your building, and aren't looking to go acquire another building and add and grow this thing to be some massive.
No,
that just it's not your goal. I've heard you say that, I've seen you do that. I know you. So to your point of what your goal is, sponsor is absolutely, 100%.
And there are plenty of people out there that are wanting to do that, right? That are expanding, that build good teams, strong businesses, good structures, streamlined processes, people that are really, really good at that. I know I'm not. And so if I were to commit to a certain level of growth, it would be, could I do less of where I think I'm at my best in exchange for growth? And, or could I, just make sure that I'm a good representative of what therapy is and what it looks like, and in a way where people would get interested in it or would be interested in pursuing it. Without any thought that there is something particularly unique about seeing me, right? Like that I know a lot of good therapists. I've been obsessed with therapy the whole time I've been a therapist. So my friends are therapists, and, I train therapists and give presentations, and anybody that knows when I give a talk or when I give a training, what I'm there for is I just like knowing therapists and social workers and clinicians and helpers. And so if I give a talk and one person afterward comes up and talks to me afterward, like that's the win, right? I don't have an area. I don't have some expert level knowledge. That's not something I think I really possess, but I do want people in the helping profession to feel really, really seen for the cool work that they do. And I do want people that are curious about maybe starting to get help to feel like that is a process that is just really, it's present, it's there, and there are people that want to help. You know, one of the things that I say is like to remember whatever reason you have for wanting to get some help or wanting to get into therapy is valid. You know, this is piggybacking off of a little bit from the loneliness episode, but if you are somebody that even has a fleeting thought that it would be nice to just have somebody to talk to who's not in your world, who would just center your experience and see what comes up, there it is. Good enough. You know, like that's absolutely it. And I know that myself and all the therapists that I know, that's how we feel. You know, like that is it. Like somebody reaches out and is interested in, hey, I need a place to talk. I think it could be helpful to talk. That's it, right? That is valid. If you get into, well, because I'm anxious, because I'm depressed, because, you know, I've suffered a loss, because I'm in a new relationship, or I just got out of a relationship, or whatever.
Lost a job.
Great. All great. But it gets really tough because if you have any kind of internal hang up about when am I suffering enough to deserve support, you're going to get better at talking yourself out of support than talking yourself into it. You know, and so we kind of put that out there first as therapists, that like your reasons are valid. If you've ever thought, damn, I should talk to somebody, there you go. You're in.
Right.
You're in the club.
And do you guys, so through your network, and I mean, I know the answer, but I don't ask for the audience. Do you, it's LightSource in particular, each of your team members, do they specialize in certain things? If somebody comes in and says, hey, me and my wife want couples counseling, they call that you pick up the phone. Is it Chaz that sees that couple, or how does that work?
Yeah. So everybody operates independently. Even the people that we refer to have their own process too. We have two people that do a lot of couples. Holly does couples. Rachel does couples. A lot of Gottman method stuff that you're familiar with.
I think I might have told a Gottman story on PAFO earlier.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to impress you the way, but I was just telling the story about that marriage class that I
interrupted.
Yeah. Ruined.
Gottmans are great.
Congregation.
The Gottmans are great, you know, and even if you don't think they're great, they're gonna fill the room up with their research and make it real hard to argue.
Feel bad.
But yeah, I mean, that is something that if you start thinking about like what kind of help would be best for you, like the specialties matter. You know, there are forms of therapy that are meant to be more targeted. We don't have anybody, for instance, at LightSource that does very like fast intervention stuff. Jessica and I can do what's called brainspotting, which is a somatic approach to trauma.
When I hear that, my naked ears, if you will, my civilian ears hear like MRI. Like I'm thinking of equipment and medical. So what is brainspotting?
So brainspotting, which was kind of an offshoot of a form of therapy called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR.
I've heard of EMDR. I didn't know anything what the letters stood for.
Yeah. So brainspotting was developed by a EMDR therapist by the name of David Grand, who noticed that when he was working with a client doing EMDR, so doing the eye movement, what's called bilateral stimulation, that he felt that this person he was working with was kind of stopping or stuttering at a certain point in the back and forth. So he decided to just hold that spot rather than keep her eyes going back and forth, and have her keep processing from just this one spot in her field of vision, and noticed that seemed to allow the language, what we would say is for the body to kind of work through whatever it was holding, whatever trauma and stress and
this is
anxiety.
talk therapy.
Yeah, you start with talk, and then you kind of move towards having somebody tell you their experience when they find this spot. what is
Are they
interesting
using like
about it.
Sorry, this is fascinating. Are they using a finger, a laser? What are your eyes following?
So in brain spotting, this is my area of knowledge since I've practiced that more. You might have a pointer.
Okay.
So just something at the end that you're moving slowly across somebody's field of vision while they are what's called activated.
So this is not a 1950s asylum where
Nope.
you're shocked, you're tied up to a bed. I mean, people.
Nope.
I think people think that.
The world.
There's nothing invasive about this at all.
No, the world of somatic approaches, so what we would say like body-based approaches to therapy, which would be, for instance, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That is not EMDR is not necessarily body-based, but it deals with the body a lot. Brain spotting, what's called sensory motor psychotherapy, or somatic processing. Those are kind of some of the big ones. There's plenty more other ones. Those are trauma treatments mostly. That only for trauma. You can do other stuff too. They are, if anybody is worried about them, they are remarkably simple and non-invasive.
I'm glad you said that. That's what I think.
It's beautiful.
When people hear that, I've learned that just people think going to a treatment center, and I believe it's just my experience, is an asylum, a psych ward. People think I'm going to go to a therapist, and if they start saying, I'm going to brain spot you, that they're going to hook them up to like the horror movies and put some electrodes up on their brains and zap them.
Yeah.
I know people, and I'm not just talking about some of my drunk friends that may not really give it a whole lot of thought. Regular people that don't know what they don't know, they think that. And I think you use that scare to say, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. But it is, to your point, it's not invasive.
Yeah. It's amazing. I one of the things with brain spotting, which is, so what you're doing in brain spotting is there's an assumption in the model that while you are, like I said, what we would call activated, meaning just like somewhat agitated about the thing you're trying to process.
Sure.
Right. You don't want to get to kind of this is also not scientific, but the line that we would say is therapy a lot of times is somewhat activating, but not triggering. Right. Because if somebody is triggered from a trauma point of view, they're not there. Right. Like that is system overload. Yeah. And so you want to find that, therapy acts as a container for you to be able to become activated about something that's hard to talk about, but safe enough and boundaried enough for you to not tip into being triggered. Right. And that is in some degrees, that is the responsibility of the therapist. Right. The therapist shouldn't be pushing in any kind of way that would tip you over. And also the process itself should be paced that way. Like I steal this from a guy named Clifton Mitchell, but in therapy, we say you never sacrifice direction for speed. As long as you're pointed in the direction of what you're working on, take your time, right? Like your life and the things going on in your life are worth a slow, thoughtful, methodical, intentional process. You do not need to find more of a time to have foot on the gas with what you're going through. Doesn't mean, of course, you don't want relief from your suffering, right? But you don't want to speed up.
I'm thinking of like an SNL skit. Well, God bless them both, but Ken Laracy or Titus Dare are my therapist. And they may not do they would maybe lean into the triggering.
They would want to move fast.
Fire pucks at your head.
Yeah, move fast. Well, I think, it's...
Those are my most intense hockey coaches I've had.
Sure.
Gold Craig Heggs.
I love Titus.
God bless him. But that is, when I hear, in all seriousness, activation versus triggering, when you get triggered, I do think of if I'm triggered and it's too much, I'll get dissociated.
Yeah.
And, one of our favorite but saddest versions of my sweet Ashley is dissociated Ash.
Dissociation is a wonderful defense that our mind has. Of a mentor of mine said that they believe in a benevolent universe because of all the different ways that we have to like shut off our experience when we're suffering. You know, like it's just like I had this mentor of mine explained one time that you think about something like dissociation, like there's a mechanism built in where you kind of like remove yourself from an experience. You know, it's like such a unbelievable defense. What, of course, the problem is if you dissociate when you're not under threat or you dissociate with any frequency, you are not really engaging in your minute to minute life. And so if it's, you know, you're missing out on a lot, but you know, therapy should be paced out like that. You know, one of the, like when I mentioned brain spotting, in brain spotting, the assumption is that while you are activated, going across your field of vision, there is going to be some spot in your field of vision where it gets more intense. And the flip side is there's a possibility that there's a spot in your field of vision that if you look at that spot, all of the tension drops away. You know, that's what we call a resource spot. It is remarkable. It is remarkable that is true. It is very simple. It is not invasive. And it's also not all of the therapy. If you talk to a lot of people that have been clients of brain spotting, they will talk about like, oh yeah, sometimes my therapist will do brain spotting because maybe
it's not every session.
Maybe for 20 minutes in a session or 30 minutes in a session, you just kind of work on something to see if it shows up in your body anywhere, if it, you know, maybe has an opportunity to work through, as we would say. But it is beautifully simple, right? Simple in my world is a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
I'm telling you, people they hear that and they think that they're signing up for a lab rat study.
Yeah. Well,
and I keep going back to my poor Ashley that day when she was dissociated and we were all sitting around talking, and about 10, 15 minutes into the conversation, you said, I'm just monitoring dissociated Ashley right now.
She's going to love that we're talking about this.
As she was like, her eyes were fixated on, maybe it was even an NBA game. She hasn't watched an NBA game in her life.
She was brain spotting herself. Yeah. She was just holding a spot. We call that gaze spotting, where you don't need the pointer. You're just in your own field of vision. Yeah. Well, that's it with therapy. Like therapy, the language that is really important is therapy is uncomfortable, but not unsafe, right? Like if you are in a space and you don't feel safe, as humans, we're only going to behave insofar as we can feel safe. You know, there is we have to be able to feel that the environment that we're in has some semblance of predictability or consistency to it. That doesn't mean it's comfortable, right? Like therapy, of course, has the potential to be uncomfortable, but I think that word doesn't do service to it, right? Because the people that you know, in all the years that I have done therapy, I sit with remarkable individuals who are doing work on themselves that they are absolutely leaning into and processing and exploring, and it's uncomfortable almost the whole time, and they don't turn away. And so the hope is that is because they're in that state of knowing that this might not be comfortable, but this is a safe space for them. You know, and a lot of us will, you know, as humans, we'll do some uncomfortable stuff if we have some trust and some safety, right? Sure. You know, that's hopefully that container is created in that way. You know, but it also goes back to things like taking your time, finding the right pace, knowing that, you know, if any therapist that I know, if you were to tell them, I really know what I should be working on this, but I'm just not ready yet, they're going to say, okay. But, you know,
so that's what I mean. I don't, if I wasn't ready to do low crawls or work on that left wing lock, I don't think Titus or Ken Laris would say, okay. Granted, they're not there. They're hockey goers.
Titus is going to show up at LightSource.
Oh, I'd pay money.
I would just listen.
Not Titus, as a client, too.
Titus would show up and be like, I want to talk about what was mentioned on the podcast, and I want you to run up the hill by your office until I tell you to stop. And I would just take off. I would listen.
Yes, sir.
Dutifully. I would listen.
I shout out to Houston. So when you guys get somebody that calls and says, I'm really struggling. I'm struggling with addiction. Do you guys, is that a specialty? Is that, I'm asking as if I don't know the answer for you guys, but, or if they're not just addiction, but let's say somebody says, hey, I've been abused.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, if that call comes to you, do you have people that are therapists more qualified or more experienced in XYZ than ABC?
Sure.
Is that how?
A lot of people are comfortable with trauma-informed care, any kind of trauma, because it's our background. We have one therapist, for instance, that works with kids and has always worked with childhood trauma. The rest of us have experience with childhood trauma. Kayla works full time with kids. Haley works with kids and adults.
Haley's probably not doing so good right now because of our Illini.
Yeah, I'm sure you could tell her.
People are mad at cams right now.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, and then when you think about, like, addiction's a good example. If you are in active addiction, probably need more than an outpatient therapist. So the way that we phrase this is that, like, an outpatient private practice therapist is what we would call the lowest level of care. Inpatient being the highest level of care.
Okay.
And so if lowest level of care means you've got to be clicking along pretty good functionally in most aspects of your life and have something that you want to work on in therapy that you could work on 1 hour a week as kind of a max point. If you are looking to talk to somebody, let's say 2 or 3 times a week because you're really going through it, that's a higher level of care.
Okay.
And so it doesn't mean that under no circumstances could you have an individual therapist that you're seeing, but it would likely be in conjunction with another level of care, like a PHP, like partial hospitalization program, or an IOP.
Interesting.
Active addiction, right? Like, I mean, the standard is if we can get you a break and get you sober, you should go somewhere. Like, that's not, I mean, again, I'm not going to make a blanket statement because I know that everybody's situation is different.
Right.
But it's just, you think about, it's more about thinking about what you deserve. And I think that's what's really hard for people is if somebody comes to me and says that they're using every day and they know they need to talk to somebody, the thing I want to remind them is that they deserve more than 1 hour, right? Like, so of course, like, it wouldn't really be responsible for me to take somebody into the lowest level of care when they need a higher level of care, right? I mean, that's kind of an obvious medical thing to say, right? Like, your primary care doc is going to send you to the ER.
Right.
Yeah,
no,
like,
I mean, absolutely.
And so, like, of course, like, I want to, be responsible in it, but I also want it to be like, if you're really suffering at a crisis level, you deserve that level of support.
So, Mike, and to clarify something, and is that step up model applicable also to if somebody's, experiencing thoughts of self-harm, if there is something severe going on, psychosis, so it's not just addiction. So you got you guys lowest level of care, and then is it a refer out, or is it we're going to connect the dot, and concurrently you go to this next level of care and then come back to, we're still your therapist. Like you've said, and I've heard you, Holly, Ashley, all therapists say once a client, always a client.
Sure.
And, usually about all these boundaries that you guys have, but also if somebody says you get a client into treatment, you probably I don't know if would you see them while they're in treatment, or would they come back to you on the outside?
It would be after.
Okay.
It's a good reminder too for anybody listening. Don't use needed to hear that as a substitute for your mental health needs. This is the opinions of two people that are talking about mental health.
One with credibility.
Reach out to local providers, call 988 for a crisis, those kinds of things. But
thanks for that good interjection.
But yeah, so if it's very unlikely that let's say somebody has seen Jessica at the office for therapy for the last year, and then they end up going to the hospital. They go in inpatient addiction treatment, right? Let's say they have a relapse. They have long-time sobriety and they have a relapse. Of course, if they get sober, or if they complete treatment and they come back out and say, hey, I'm done with treatment and I'd like to get back on your books. Yeah. I mean, that's not that's not going to be a concern. That's how pretty much anybody would operate. And even when you ask about addiction, somebody working a program, somebody with long-term sobriety coming to outpatient therapy is great.
Yeah, it's an arrow in the quiver, right?
Yeah.
Even what I was relating, as you were saying, lowest level of care, I always say, and as we've been building underground on Wednesday nights, that's good language for us to use, because what I've told people is that we are our goal is to provide space and community, and resource out there. We want a table full of sober livings, of treatment centers, of clinician contacts, of trauma therapy, the Narcan, 988, everything you can think of, so we can connect the dot to that next level. Yeah. If somebody comes there and needs that, or somebody knows one. So I like how you put that. My next question in this regard, and it may sound like a dumb question, but I think I want to ask these, because I know, similar to brain spotting, there's a lot of misnomers on anything. I think especially in this space, because there's something scary about making a change for people. People are very comfortable. So we create these kind of false narratives, so we don't have to go to therapy. We don't have to do, even though it's so good for us. So if somebody has a psychiatrist, do they also have a therapist?
Not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, that's, there's depending on the let's say presenting problem, right? Like if depression. Yeah. Right. Use that as an example. The standard for treating depression would probably be the gold standard would be medication in conjunction with talk therapy.
There you go. Okay.
That is kind of the standard, where if you were to say, I don't want to go talk to anybody, I just want to take medication for my depression. Okay.
You're being too nice.
That's fine. But it is fine. I mean, my bias about, of course, I want people to go to therapy, is because I believe really deeply in the therapeutic process and relationship. Okay. I believe in how it being in a safe, well-boundaried, mutually accountable relationship is really helpful for our inner work, for our growth, for our building a relationship with ourselves, because that's who we spend all of our time with, is yourself. I believe very deeply in that, so I am just a general proponent of it. When somebody says, well, I get really, really depressed, I take this medication for it, I've been on Paxil for a really long time, and it really helps me out, and yeah, I've done therapy, I've tried it, but it really wasn't for me. Okay,
sure, yeah,
that makes sense to me. That makes sense, because I also think that if somebody is coming underground, right, and they feel a real sense of community there, and you say, well, gosh, you should talk to somebody, or let's link you up over here, or even you say, gosh, I mean, have you ever tried medication, right? Like, I mean, we're getting into scope of practice, right? Neither you nor I prescribe, so we can't really say anything about whether or not medication is good or bad.
Another clarification.
Well, it's true. I mean, scope of practice matters. If I say, like, have you ever tried medication? And somebody says, I don't know. Do you know anything about it? I'd be like, I'm not qualified to, so I need to be mindful of that.
So responsible.
But if somebody were to,
a lot of bartenders prescribe medication.
Yeah, if you were to say to a person, something about their, seeing a psychiatrist, and they said, I just don't think I'm ready for that yet. Right? Like you would in that moment still probably have some comfort with like, well, keep coming underground. Yeah. Right. And so a lot of it is this line between understanding the standards of what can really be helpful and meeting people exactly where they're at, to some of the accountability piece, where if somebody is in therapy, the accountability is within the framework of the relationship, meaning you want to have a strong enough relationship with your therapist to say, I don't think this is helpful, or I think I need a little bit more of this, or a little bit more conversation about this, or could you help me with this? That relationship has to be there. That is any kind of
I rescheduled with Waves with Jessica today.
Probably needed it.
I did, because yesterday I got a little bit of a lash-in about attunement or something. Ashley was saying I wasn't paying attention to something like that.
There it is.
I told her I'm a tuner. I'm tuning. I'm tuned in. Name that tune.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right after she said you're not attuned to me, and you're like, oh, hold on, I'm tuned.
I'm tuned.
There it is.
It really happened with the cell phone situation. Wednesday night, apparently we were closing down underground. It was me, Zoe, Jeff Brenneman, who you've met, Jeff. And Ashley. And there was a conversation going on. I suppose I was in part of it, and I got squirreled by my phone, and I came back to and said, what's going on? And they were actively, I guess Charlie had told Zoe that when Dad looks at his phone, he stops listening to me. And Zoe was telling that story. Well played. And it was like God just dropped in this case study. And then, then we had a longer conversation about it yesterday over tacos. And I need to be a tuner, a little bit more tuner.
Sure. Attunement is a big part of any kind of help, any kind of support, because, we talked about loneliness, right? You're talking about people, the experience of not being attuned to, right? Like,
in fact, she quoted you this morning as we were getting ready, because she was listening to your podcast, and she absolutely quoted what you said last week on this shit. Yeah, appreciate it. And I am now praying that by the time this drops next week on Friday, either she's dissociated or a little bit calmed down.
We'll use
women love when you tell them to calm down too.
Yeah. People don't really respond well to being told to calm down. And as a public service announcement, you shouldn't. If somebody tells you to calm down, that is probably their discomfort with your discomfort that is showing up. I think like you say, like you cancel with your therapist today. It's very hard to ask for what you need in therapy, right? Like, of course, it's like I said, it's a well-boundaried relationship. It's a relationship that is culturally bound. It is relationally bound. It's not a friendship. It's not, hanging out in that way, but it's the accountability of being able to say to your therapist, I think I need to work on blank, or I really need to kind of hunker down on some things right now, or even telling a therapist, like, I don't think you're getting it. I don't like, that's a hard thing to do.
Sure.
Right. Like, it's a really, really tough thing to do. And it doesn't have to be, it's not a huge moment of weightiness. Sometimes it might just be, if somebody says something to me and I do some version of kind of repeating it back or interpreting or active listening or something like that, I need them to be able to be like, no, I think it's more like, like you got to have that. And you would think that sounds really simple, but think about how many times in relationships in general, you get misunderstood. So you do whatever your version of shutting down, walking away, changing the subject, pivoting is, just to not make the circumstance a little bit uncomfortable, right? To kind of almost maybe insulate somebody from the accountability of their own dialogue there. And so chances are, if you were to go, if you were to not cancel today, for instance, and say, it's been like a very weird week. Wednesday was weird. Charlie and Ashley called me on some stuff that I'm trying to make some sense of, and I need to kind of hunker down and tune in because I'm worried that maybe I'm not listening to the people that I love. Maybe I'm too distracted. That is a great, for your therapist, it's a great opportunity, right? Because that's the accountability of the relationship, for the therapist to have an opportunity to say, okay, like let's get after it. Like, let's take that seriously.
I'm going to need you to write that down.
Sure. Well, and we have the one sheet. You just haven't been looking at it. But it's also kind of another thing that I think is worth normalizing while we're in it, is the language that I will use is, the idea of like, once you start, you can stop. A really, really common thing, right, is people come and go in therapy. You come and work on something, you're there for a little bit, you take a break, you're feeling a little bit better. Maybe you're feeling okay and you still have things to work on, but it's not going to be now. Like that is part of a therapeutic relationship, is the idea that your therapist knows that you might stop, you might take breaks, you might, you might even kind of quiet quit and just cancel an appointment and not make another one. And then 6 months later be like, I need to make an appointment, right? Like those things are all fine.
And well, what about if people do that? I would bet my bottom dollar on it that people that do that, most of them are, I need to go back to my therapist. So I kind of ghosted them or left them on red and feel some type of.
I do think that happens.
That they're going to be mad, like that. Yeah. You're going to be mad at me if I do that to you, if you're my therapist, and
I can speak for myself.
Sure.
And the people that I respect, it's untrue.
It's untrue.
When I haven't heard from somebody and somebody reaches out, it is a stone cold honor to know that I'm still on the team. Okay. And I know that because
it's human nature. I think that if I like how you said quiet quit. If I did that and then 6 months later I know that if I and Jessica was like, yeah, see you Tuesday. Yeah. And I would spend the first 30 minutes apologizing.
Yeah, no, it's because.
And she wouldn't let me. But to your point, I think I can see people being, man, I there's some shame and remorse.
Well, it's hard. Yeah. I think, you're right. It's human nature, right? There isn't anything unusual about.
But what you're saying, it's not true. Call us back.
Absolutely. Because it's. The only thing I want to be is safe and present and trustworthy. And whenever
somebody hold a grudge.
Yeah, right. Whenever somebody reaches out and says some version of I need to get in, I need to talk, that's awesome. Right. I mean, that's an honor. And that is, part of the I want people that have to take breaks or not come. I want them. Of course, I want them to come back when they feel like they need a place to talk. I also would want people, if they worked with me and said, I really need to talk to somebody, and I'm not sure that it's going to be you, but you're the only point of contact I have. Sure, okay, let me help you find somebody. Like I care about stuff like that, because that is like just caring about therapy. There's lots of good options out there for therapists.
I can relate a little bit, obviously not a clinician, but when people reach out to me to dip their toe in, if they got a drinking problem or if they're, addicted and they've considered treatment, and we talk for an hour, exchange even a couple text messages, and it might go on for a couple days, and then the conversation kind of ends. And if I get a call again in 6 months that person wants to revisit that conversation, I am not like, well, where'd you go? Like I'm glad you're back. Let's see if we're ready type of.
Yeah.
That's how I feel even. So because I would also wear the shoe. If I did that quiet quit, I would feel bad going back. But then now I'm reminding myself it's a good feeling as a person, as the person maybe that's trying to help, wants to help. You don't get pissed. You don't. You're grateful.
It being anytime I could go through the same thing. I talk about, my own process of being in therapy and how
shout out to Dr.
Jill and what it feels like to just have somebody who I know is just kind of on my side.
Yeah.
Right. If I sound like I'm way out of pocket, she'll probably turn up an eyebrow, but like she's on my side.
Sure.
And the two things I really like as real kind of oversimplification sometimes is you want a therapist who's on your side, and you want somebody that's easy to talk to. And that might sound simple, but we're talking about how hard this is, right? So if talking about yourself and talking about stuff that you haven't talked about before is really difficult, you deserve somebody who makes that feel easier, right? Then again, doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable, but that's where the relationship matters, is when you notice, gosh, I'm talking to this person and they do make it easier to talk to them, right? It does feel like they're on my side here. It's a hard thing to navigate, but that is it. A therapist wants to be on your side. A therapist wants to hear your side of things, hear what it's like to be you, reflect that back, validate that, and help you get more curious about your inner experience.
Well, you're nailing this sheet. And I think you've maybe saved one of the best ones for last, at least if you're Chris Pondoff, who's an alcoholic who likes to make things about him.
Sure.
It's always about you, it says.
Yeah. The two...
I like this box.
The two closers on that sheet a lot of times are, to remember that if you are in therapy, it's about you. And if you are in therapy, we appreciate it. Sure. Right? Like, you are appreciated. Because...
that feels good.
Yeah.
that.
And it's something where the thought of centering your experience, right? If you are in therapy, you having an opportunity to feel like you're talking about you. It shouldn't necessarily, we have an acronym that I've maybe mentioned before where therapists will say wait, and wait as an acronym historically stands for why am I talking, right? You want the therapist needs to know exactly why am I sharing, right? Like why
am I talking?
And you could use that and you
to myself.
You don't want Ashley to hear this, but the other thing is, another kind of translation of that acronym wait is whose agenda is this, right? I'm
gonna need you to write those down for me too.
As the therapist, this should not be my agenda.
Sure.
Like this should not be, it should not be the idea of where I need to take this or what I think you need to do with your life, right? Guide on the side, not the sage on the stage, right? Like that is not it. This is if
Bobby Niemeyer.
Yeah, my man. And if you are somebody that is just looking for help, you may have zero experience ever feeling like somebody was willing to just make the conversation about you. There's a significant amount of times that people, even myself, go into therapy and start talking, and it becomes like, oh, this is really weird. I don't think I just think about myself for this long very often.
Sure.
That's why we quickly, if you're somebody who's in therapy, you quickly ask, well, how are you doing? Right? You ask your therapist, how are you doing? What have you been up to? Which is like, great. It's just relational. It's not that deep, but
I do it. Actually, I've mastered that.
Yeah. And that's
Ask
okay.
Jessica.
That's okay. The basic niceties of a relationship are important, right? Like we're humans, right? There has to be a shared humanity. Carl Jung would always say that the therapy is incomplete if both people haven't been changed by it, right?
Yeah. I'm really good at to asking about you especially if I got a lot going on that I should be talking about. And then I'm really good at the doorknob conversation.
Oh, sure.
I've mastered that. And I get called on it, which is wonderful.
Well, and I'll defend you a little bit. Let me give you an example of why this is why you take your time. Right?
Okay.
This is why therapy matters. Is you are also not somebody that has a hard time talking.
Sure.
this is your third podcast on your channel, right?
Yeah.
Like you are not somebody that has a hard time talking. So naturally, the way that you would approach
I could see
therapy,
all the eyes roll that listen.
right. Naturally, you would approach therapy where chances are you get on Zoom or whatever, you hop onto your appointment and you kind of get going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably like a little bit topical. It's a little bit, I just got off this call, or, work's been weird with this, or I've been doing a lot of this, or God, I got to travel and I hate flying to Phoenix, or, you kind of get going. And you're naturally a fast enough talker and a strong enough communicator that almost anything you say feels like the important thing to talk about today. So then when you're 30 minutes into talking about the third most important thing,
Ryan's text message then, Friday night.
Yeah, then you get to the second one, that you get to number 2 on the list because you realize, oh gosh, I need to talk about that whole thing with Charlie. And then, you get to number 1. Some of that isn't necessarily avoidance, right? We don't have to call it all like some deep kind of Freudian dive.
Sure.
Some of that is, you're somebody that you communicate effectively enough that when you get rolling, it seems like this is what you want to talk about. And then by the time you get to what you ought to talk about, it's a little late in the game.
Right.
And it's hard to tell the difference between the two. So you need a therapist that's able to be like, wait, you spent 40 minutes on this, and then you just bring this up now. And it's probably not always, maybe sometimes, but it's probably not always just like you're avoiding the real topic. Sometimes it's just like you get going.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, when we get talking to somebody that we trust, it feels good. It's nice to talk to somebody you trust. So you just share. And then when you go, I should probably talk to you about blank.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just now getting to this, but I've really enjoyed sharing this whole time, Like,
or I'll pick up the phone and if it's a 9 a.m. appointment from 7:30 to 9, I've been putting out a fire. It may not have been the hottest fire of my week, but it was a fire that I was working on and just putting out. So I'll pour out to her, and next thing you know, I'm at the 40-minute mark and being like, oh yeah, I need to tune in more. To my wife.
One thing that.
One tuner.
Name that too. One thing that the therapists I know and the therapists that I respect are universally think about is we know that it's hard to talk about yourself. We know that therapy is difficult. We know that you can get to talking about something and be 30 minutes into it and be like, oh my God, I can't believe I've been talking about this. I can't believe I said that. I didn't want, that can happen. And so we know, right? That's what I mean when I say like we have this appreciation. Like, I mean, I care deeply. I don't want a syllable to be said around me that is said in vain. I will miss things. Again, that's the humanness of things. But that is the appreciation. Like it's hard. If you talk about something that you're supposed to talk about at the 50-minute mark of a 60-minute conversation, your therapist knows, damn, that must be really hard for you to talk about. Mm-hmm. Sure. And that's why you try to play the long game. That's why you try to not rush things. That's why you try to, let things unfold. There's a therapist I know, a social worker that I've been trained by, I don't know her personally, named Amy Bryant. And Amy Bryant uses the question, is there anything that we haven't been talking about that we should? And I love that question, not as like this like hammer, right?
Sure.
Like I love that question because I'm only asking that question. I'm not, if you answer it, I'm not then assuming that's what we're going to do.
Sure.
It's just kind of like, giving somebody an opportunity. If I say like, is there anything we're not talking about that we should? And somebody's like, oh, I should really talk to you about my sister because we got in an argument last week. Okay, do you want to talk about that? No, I don't know. I'll talk about it next time. I mean, I'm still mad about it, but I'm mad. I mean, sure. Okay, right? It's just that reminder of, well, hey, I'm paying attention. I know that we can't get all this done in an hour. Mm-hmm. I know that if you've got 4 things that you want to talk about, giving them each a good equal 15 minutes is probably not how that's going to work. And so the appreciation that I have, the respect that I have for the process is more those reminders of Well, I'm trying to learn how you communicate. I'm trying to make sure that I understand how you pace, how you communicate, right? That's attunement, right?
Yeah,
Like,
all right.
That idea of just, you're just trying to learn how somebody engages, how they talk, how they share. Think about like a normal kind of argument that happens where somebody says, I can't talk about this right now. I need to just step away. And then you hear of the consistent argument of somebody that keeps like following a little bit.
Anxiety. I need to know what's bothering you.
Both people are deeply uncomfortable in that example, but where, let's say as a partnership, right? Like if it's, you and a spouse or if it's a committed relationship or close family or anything like that, those moments of anxiety, also the attunement is, well, wait, how does this person pace out their communication? How do they pace out their arguments? How do they, how do they self-regulate? How long does it take? Because it's just that difference is there. In therapy, where it's this safe relationship that is bound by this, 60-minute hour, and you're talking to a therapist who's not in your personal life, right? That therapist is just trying to make sure that you get the respect that you deserve for the way that you communicate. And that's that. Again, I don't mind. I used to be very self-conscious about overutilizing a word, right? I always, can I get a synonym for a million times over? But I don't mind saying, like, it's just an honor to be able to sit with somebody.
I think it's important, if knowing you, and I've said this the other day, if something's repeated and you don't go look for a synonym to be repetitive, it's important that you're repeating it.
Yeah. I'm glad to have this conversation.
And
today.
I know you mean that, man.
It's just the best. I mean, it's just the best to sit with people, and it's so humbling because, you really learn what you don't know. Like the more and more that I sit with people, the more humbling it gets to be like, you just don't know.
You
don't know what's
people,
going on.
I know that.
I do.
Human beings, man. And before you close us out, you were being really humble, and the Chaz that you are, I want to, in my opinion, which is unqualified, I think, and I tell people this, that usually, and maybe it's because of the vacuum, if they're coming to me for advice, then it's a checkbox and yes, you need a therapist. But I say that because I think I've told this to Charlie, I think it's the juice squeeze equation, the low risk of having someone on your corner. Like, I think everybody should have, and I understand it's not the world we live in that's litigated by insurance, but everybody should have a PCP, a primary care physician. I think everybody should have a talk therapist. And yes, you can take breaks, but there's literally such low risk and such high reward. You said it at the very beginning. Even if the baseline or the minimum you're getting out of what you're going to talk about, you have a safe space of somebody that will be centered in what you're going through or just what you are, and it's just a low risk move. I mean, my advice, it's not worth two pennies, is that it's a preventative maintenance thing. Get a therapist, especially when the fire's not burning hot.
Sure.
Because I think because that's the time to establish a relationship. Call it practice, to use a sports analogy, for when shit hits the fan or some life-changing phone call happens in the middle of the night and your life is completely wrecked and changed forever. Now you have a game time situation with the therapist instead of, baptism by fire. So that as humble as you are, you can have a psychiatrist and just take meds if you have depression, and maybe that's good. Maybe that works. I just think it's so helpful. And as we talk about, I think your profession is becoming more accessible to more people, which is key. It used to not be, I don't think.
No, you're right.
I think one thing about COVID, as much as some people can't do virtual therapy, I understand that, but I think it has increased people that are talking to people. I think,
sure.
If there's anything good, that was born from COVID, I feel,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, that telehealth type of atmosphere, which some people love it, some people hate it. I get it, but at the end of the day, it's increased availability,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
access, and I think that's a good thing. I highly recommend it. If you're saying I got everything going, I love that for you. I do. I root for you. I root for people to succeed and do great. Even more when I'm at my lowest and things aren't going great, I will root for you. But I will say I pray it's forever too. But I think it's always good to have someone in your corner to be able to go talk to, even if you get in a relationship established, take a break as needed. I know life is busy, but that's my 2 cents. It's worth a penny.
Sure. Well, and I think that one of the ways that I will phrase it sometimes is that therapy can be high risk and slow reward, where initially there's a lot of vulnerability, and you're getting to know a therapist, you're building rapport, you're building relationship, you're trying to get some comfort, you're trying to see if this is a person you trust and you have an easy time talking to. So initially it's this high risk, slow reward. It's like, gosh, I'm vulnerable, I'm sharing, I'm talking, and I like this person, I trust this person, but I don't necessarily know exactly what's going to turn out from it. But over time, that reward continues to build. And my view on therapy, because there's always been someone in a community that was the person that people went to process what it was like to be them. There was the rite of passage of, man, I got a lot going on, and who do I talk to? Is clergy for most of, maybe, a lot of human history, documented human history. But I do really think that therapy overall is a rite of passage. You deserve to have a place where you go and talk about what it is like to be you, without just the trappings of a concern about like diagnosis, or like you said, some of the insurance stuff. Like that stuff can be a lot to navigate or seem overwhelming. But yeah, I mean, that's why we think of this idea of be a lamp unto yourself. It doesn't mean go be self-reliant. It means maybe advocate for yourself enough to let yourself have a place where you talk.
Sure.
To find a space where you'll take the time that it needs. You'll stay curious with who you are and what it's like to be you. You maybe hold the relationship accountable. You ask for different kind of support, or hold the therapist into a good space where you can ask for them to share, for them to help with a very specific thing that maybe you haven't talked about yet, or you're bearing some of this shame. But I think overall I agree. Like, please, if you are somebody that has ever had the thought of it would be nice to talk to somebody, or you wish you had another person that was easier to talk to on your side, I really hope you look. I think that I'm hoping that you guys will post this for this be a lamp unto yourself, maybe on the socials, so people can kind of see, like, this is what we're talking about when you're getting into therapy. You're allowed to look for these things. You're allowed to know.
You can't post it on socials.
No social media here. But, like, just know that you deserve the opportunity to just explore your inner life with somebody who's going to put that experience first. And hopefully somebody needed to hear that.
Amen.